Have you ever felt like someone is silently draining your life force? Like a tree gradually withering, a flame flickering out, or like your phone battery rapidly dropping when you're near someone? That feeling isn't pleasant, and it could be a sign that you're in contact with a toxic person. These people aren't like the villains in movies. They don't wear masks or have obvious dark schemes. They could be your friends, family members, colleagues, or even your lovers. They exist around us, and sometimes we unintentionally let them pull us into a vortex of negative emotions, exhaustion, and even pain. In this video, we'll explore 12 clear signs of toxic people. Recognizing these signs will not only help you protect yourself from negative influences, but will also be the first step in building and maintaining healthy, lasting relationships. So are you ready to embark on this journey? Join me as we uncover the secrets hidden behind seemingly harmless behaviors and learn how to create a life filled with positive energy. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss other valuable videos. Let's get started. Sign 1. Constant manipulation. The most dangerous weapon. Have you ever felt like you're being led down a path you don't want to go, very gently, subtly, to the point where you don't even realize it? That's manipulation, the most dangerous weapon in a toxic person's arsenal. Imagine life as a game of chess, and your opponent keeps changing the rules to gain an advantage. Gradually, you realize you're being pulled into an unfair game. Manipulation is similar. It happens silently, permeating every corner of the relationship, making you feel lost and out of control. According to Dr. Harriet Breaker, author of the book, Who's Pulling Your Strings? Manipulation is a subtle way of influencing others, making them act according to the manipulator's wishes without realizing the control. These people often use sophisticated tricks, making you feel guilty, doubt yourself, or even feel confused about reality. Signs of a manipulator. Using guilt. They will say things like, "If you really cared about me, you would do this for me," or "You're so disappointing." They always intentionally make you feel guilty for not doing what they want, making you doubt reality. They will deny what you see, hear, or feel. They might say, "You're just imagining things," or "That's not how it happened," causing you to gradually lose faith in yourself. Always playing the victim, no matter the situation, they will always try to make themselves the victim, even if they're at fault. Their goal is to receive sympathy and attention from others. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Manipulators are masters at distorting our perception to serve their purposes. A study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology shows that people who tend to manipulate often score high in narcissism and Machiavellianism, a dangerous combination. Self-defense strategies. Set clear boundaries. Sometimes a firm no is enough to create a solid defense. Don't be afraid to upset others. Remember, protecting yourself is the top priority. Trust your intuition. If something feels wrong, trust your gut. Intuition is a natural radar that helps you identify potential dangers. Seek support. Share your feelings with close friends, people you trust. They can help you gain a more objective view and offer helpful advice. Psychologist George Simon once said, "The best defense against manipulation is knowledge and understanding." Arm yourself with the necessary knowledge and always be vigilant against manipulative behaviors. And remember, not everyone who sometimes manipulates has bad intentions. The important thing is that you recognize the patterns and try to improve yourself. As Marcus Aurelius said, "Soon you will have forgotten everything, and everything will have forgotten you." Don't let yourself be swallowed by manipulators, but always be alert and aware. Sign 2. The art of never apologizing, a shield for a fragile ego. Have you ever met someone who always believes they're right, even when they're clearly wrong? It's a rather common phenomenon, and according to experts, it can be a sign of deep emotional issues. Imagine life as a giant Monopoly game. Everyone makes mistakes at some point. Everyone has to go to jail sometimes. But there are some players who think they have a get-out-of-jail-free card forever. These are the masters of the art of never apologizing. Psychologist Robert Enright, a pioneer in the study of forgiveness, believes that the inability to apologize often stems from a fragile ego and a deep-seated fear of vulnerability. It's as if these people are wearing emotional armor, preventing them from admitting their mistakes. Stoic philosophy and remorse. Marcus Aurelius in Meditations reminds us that the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. In other words, if someone refuses to apologize to you, the best response is not to imitate their behavior. Don't let the negative behavior of others affect who you are. Signs of someone who never apologizes. Always has a reason. They will make up this excuse or that to justify their mistakes. They never take responsibility for their actions. Blames others. They will blame others or external factors rather than admit their mistakes. They always want to be innocent. Downplays the impact of their actions. They will try to minimize the consequences of their actions. They don't want to admit that their actions have hurt others. A study published in the Journal of Personality showed that people with narcissistic traits are often less likely to offer sincere apologies. It may sound surprising, but it's true. So what do you do if you're dealing with someone like this? Or worse, if you realize you also have these traits? Advice for you. Practice empathy. Try to understand why apologizing is difficult for them. Maybe they have deep-seated fears or wounds. Set clear boundaries. Don't let their lack of apologies become the norm in your relationship. Remind them of the importance of apologies. If you're someone who often apologizes, you might inspire them. A sincere apology can make a big difference in a relationship. I once had a friend who always avoided apologizing, which strained our friendship. Finally, after a difficult situation, instead of demanding an apology, I simply expressed that I valued honesty and sincerity. Surprisingly, this prompted my friend to apologize for the first time. So the next time you find it difficult to say, "I'm sorry," ask yourself, do you want to be right or do you want peace? Sometimes a simple apology can be a bridge to healthier and more fulfilling relationships. Sign 3. Lack of empathy. A heart of stone. Have you ever met someone who seems to have a heart of stone? That's the third sign on our toxic person identification kit, a lack of empathy. This trait is like an invisible wall that separates some people from the rest of humanity. Imagine living in a world where no one can feel or understand what you're going through. Such isolation is terrifying, isn't it? That's exactly how people who lack empathy experience life. A cold world where the emotions of others become invisible. Psychologist Daniel Goleman describes empathy as the ability to understand the emotions of others. Without it, human relationships become shallow and superficial. But how do you recognize someone who lacks this important quality? Signs of a lack of empathy. Apathetic reactions to others' pain. They don't seem to care about the difficulties or suffering that others are experiencing. Difficulty seeing things from another's perspective. They can't understand why others feel or act the way they do. Frequently making insensitive remarks. They might say things that are tactless without realizing their impact on others. Difficulty maintaining deep relationships. They have trouble building and maintaining meaningful relationships because they can't connect on an emotional level. I remember an old friend from college. At first, I thought he was a straightforward person, but over time, I realized his lack of empathy was deeper. When another friend of ours lost a loved one, while everyone else expressed support and sympathy, he just shrugged and said, "Everyone goes through that. It's no big deal." These words not only hurt our grieving friend, but also made others uncomfortable. Gradually, an invisible gap was created between him and others. This lack of empathy was like an invisible coat of armor, preventing him from feeling and connecting with the emotions around him. A study by the University of Michigan found that the level of empathy in college students has decreased by 40% over the past 30 years. It's alarming, as if we're facing an epidemic of hearts of stone. But not all is lost. The good news is that empathy can be nurtured and strengthened. Research shows that active listening and putting ourselves in others' shoes can significantly enhance our ability to empathize. Advice: when encountering someone with a heart of stone, don't personalize it. Their lack of empathy says more about them than about you. Stay true to your values and don't let their behavior affect your emotions. Don't expect immediate change. Empathy is a skill that takes time to develop. Be patient and don't get discouraged. Be an example. Sometimes showing empathy can inspire others to do the same. Show care and understanding. The Dalai Lama once said, "If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion." Sometimes practicing this means imagining what might be happening in the life of the person making them act cold and indifferent. You might be surprised to find they are carrying invisible burdens, and with just a bit of compassion, you might uncover a small but genuine connection with them. Sign 4. Constantly creating conflict. A virus causing tension. Have you ever found yourself caught up in conflicts and arguments that seem to happen constantly, even if you do nothing to provoke them? That's when you might be caught up in the whirlwind of people who love to play drama. They act like directors behind the scenes, stirring up discord and seemingly finding joy in disrupting the peace around them. Their motive could be for entertainment, or sometimes just a way to hide their own weaknesses. It's as if they have a radar that detects tranquility and an urgent need to break it. Renowned psychologist John Gottman, known for his extensive research on relationships, describes this behavior as one of the 4 dangerous horsemen of the apocalypse in interpersonal relationships. He calls it contempt. This is a form of conflict that goes beyond a mere argument. It's a deep expression of disdain that can destroy any relationship. A friend of mine had such a colleague. Every meeting, every project turned into a stage for drama. A small comment from someone could escalate into a heated argument. People around gradually felt exhausted, as if there was no room for peace or collaboration. Not only disrupting work, this colleague also created an uncontrollable, tense atmosphere. Gradually, my friend and others learned to keep their distance, avoiding that tense vortex. Author Ryan Holiday, in the book The Obstacle is the Way, reminds us that calmness can spread, but so can chaos. People who create conflict are like viruses causing tension and instability, and if we're not careful, they can transmit that feeling to everyone around them. Dealing with people who like to cause conflict. Don't participate in their drama. Remember, it takes 2 people to create a conflict. Choose not to participate in meaningless arguments. Practice Stoic indifference. As Marcus Aurelius suggested, choose not to be hurt, and you will not be hurt. Don't let the negativity of others affect your peace of mind. Seek out like-minded people. Be friends with people who value peace. Living among those who also value calmness and harmony will help you feel more stable. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." Accept that some people like to create chaos, but don't let that chaos become a part of your life. Recognize the signs, set clear boundaries, and preserve the peace within yourself. Sign 5. Constant lying. Balloons instead of bricks. Have you ever felt like someone is quietly leading you down a path they have mapped out without you even realizing it? Imagine you're building a house where each brick represents trust, shared experiences, and mutual honesty. Now imagine what would happen if someone starts replacing those bricks with balloons painted to look like bricks. At first it seems harmless, even appealing, but soon the entire structure will collapse. Lies are like these disguised balloons. They may seem harmless at first, but they slowly erode the foundation of any relationship. The Stoic philosopher Seneca emphasized that honesty is the essential foundation for meaningful and lasting relationships. Imagine him at a family dinner where everyone is lying about who ate the last piece of cake. You can see him politely excusing himself in protest. But seriously, constant lying isn't just a bad habit. It's also an alarming sign. Lies can start small, as harmless white lies, but they quickly escalate into complex stories like in a spy movie. Over time, people who are habitual liars will treat deception as their second language, making you feel lost, trying to decode a constantly changing reality. Why do some people choose to live in a maze of lies? Sometimes it's to manipulate, sometimes to hide their own mistakes, or simply a loss of the ability to tell the truth. As if the instruction manual about honesty has long been lost. I remember a friend named Lisa who had a relationship with someone who was always hiding things. At first, the lies seemed unimportant, like little lies about being late or unexpected meetings. But then they grew. Once he said he had to leave the city for work, but Lisa found out he was hanging out with an old friend nearby. It was like living in a brick house made of balloons. A place that seemed sturdy but was empty inside. Signs of a constant liar. Their stories often change. Their statements lack consistency. They frequently contradict themselves. They tend to avoid eye contact. Although not always true, it's a common sign. Pay attention to changes in body language, such as touching their nose or rubbing their neck, signs of discomfort when lying. Often avoid direct answers. Instead, they respond with vague, evasive answers. Lastly, try a little trick. Ask them to retell the story in reverse order. Because they often make up as they go, this simple request can be difficult for them. What can you do? Start by observing the signs. If their story doesn't make sense, or if something feels wrong, trust your intuition. You don't have to become a detective, but ignoring these signs won't help either. Most importantly, cultivate your own honesty. Be a solid brick in your wall of trust. You will not only feel better about yourself, but also inspire others to be more truthful. Recognizing a liar isn't about judging them, it's about protecting yourself. Like having an umbrella on a rainy day, you might not avoid the rain, but at least you won't get wet. Sign 6. Overreacting. A pressure cooker about to explode. Have you ever been around someone who reacts as if the world is ending just because of the smallest criticism? This behavior is like a red flag warning you to be cautious when dealing with them. Imagine a pressure cooker reaching its limit, waiting for the final pressure to explode. That's exactly how these people behave, overreacting and creating emotional earthquakes that disrupt everything around them. You may have witnessed this before. But what causes some people to react so strongly to criticism? The answer lies deep inside. These fits of anger reflect insecurity and a fragile self-esteem. For them, any criticism is like a direct blow to their self-worth, triggering a fierce response to protect a weak ego. The ability to handle criticism maturely is a sign of emotional maturity and self-awareness. But those who cannot do this are trapped in a vicious cycle of defensiveness and denial. A study by the University of Michigan shows that people who overreact to criticism tend to report lower levels of happiness, and their relationships are often filled with conflict. This highlights the importance of recognizing and addressing this behavior appropriately. A friend of mine had such a colleague. Whenever their team met to review projects and provide constructive feedback, this colleague would react as if he was deeply offended. Any small suggestion was met with defensiveness and considered a personal attack. Sometimes he would even walk out, leaving a tense atmosphere behind. Eventually, the whole team became wary of giving feedback, and the workplace became stifling. My friend realized that they had to set boundaries, limiting their interactions with this colleague to protect their own mental health. A healthy relationship is built on open communication and the ability to accept constructive criticism. If you find yourself dealing with someone who overreacts to criticism, set clear boundaries to protect your peace. Not everyone is ready to face their insecurities, but you have every right to maintain your emotional health in relationships. Sign 7. Main character syndrome, the star in their own play. Have you ever met someone who seems to think the whole universe revolves around them? That's main character syndrome. This phenomenon is closely related to narcissism, and it's more common than you might think. Imagine life as a grand play, and people with main character syndrome always see themselves as the star, pushing everyone else down to supporting roles or extras in their own epic story. It might sound funny, but it's not fun at all if you're one of those extras. From a psychological perspective, narcissism isn't just about loving oneself. Dr. Craig Malkin, a psychologist at Harvard, describes it as an addiction to a special feeling, as if these people have an insatiable hunger for admiration and attention. History is full of people who could be diagnosed with this syndrome. Think of Napoleon Bonaparte, who crowned himself emperor. Imagine the confidence that requires. Or consider Louis V of France, who once said, "I am the state." Clearly, these people were not insecure. Dealing with people with main character syndrome, set clear boundaries. People with main character syndrome tend to invade your space. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't feed their ego. An occasional compliment is fine, but don't make it your full-time job. Find common ground. If possible, even the most self-centered people can form meaningful connections when there are shared interests. Remember, you won't be able to change them, but you can learn to navigate their turbulent waters without being pulled down. And here's something interesting. We all have a little bit of a main character inside us. That's right, even you. The next time you find yourself thinking you're the center of the universe, stop and remember that you're just one star in a galaxy full of stars. So if you find yourself on the stage of life with someone who seems to want all the attention for themselves, take a deep breath, smile, and remember that they might think it's their show, but you will decide your role in it. And who knows, being a supporting character might have its own benefits. You don't have to memorize a lot of lines, and you are free to leave whenever you want. Sign 8. The art of taking advantage of others. Pawns in their game. Have you ever felt like someone only contacts you when they need something? As if you're just a temporary stop for them, a place to go when they need a favor, and then they disappear when they're done. Imagine life as a complex chess game, where some players are willing to sacrifice you like a pawn just to take one more step forward. But don't worry, today we're going to turn you into a rook, or better yet, a queen. Pieces that aren't easily sacrificed and can anticipate the opponent's moves. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "Those who take advantage of the misfortunes of others will never escape destruction." Opportunists seem to have a built-in radar to detect and exploit the weaknesses of others. They approach when they see something beneficial for themselves. Have you ever noticed someone who only calls or texts when they're in trouble or need help? That's a classic sign of someone who sees you as a tool, a resource, rather than a true friend. Of course, not everything is black and white. Sometimes we all fall into opportunistic behavior without even realizing it. The difference lies in the intention and frequency. Asking for help when you really need it is natural, but when every interaction is driven by self-interest, it's a different story. How to protect yourself from exploiters. Respect your time and energy. These are precious resources that shouldn't be wasted. You're not obligated to be everyone's lifesaver. Assess the balance of giving and receiving in the relationship. If someone only takes without ever giving, it might be time to reconsider that relationship. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. The renowned psychologist Carl Rogers once said, "The only way to truly understand someone is to put yourself in their place." Ironically, This is something that opportunists rarely do. The next time someone appears in your life as if you're just a stepping stone, remember that you have the right to say no and protect your boundaries. Remember that you are not just a stepping stone. You can help them move forward, but you also have the right to let them bounce back and fall. The power is in your hands. Sign 9. Constant disrespect for boundaries, a lawn being trespassed. Have you ever felt like your personal boundaries are treated as a no trespassing sign that others completely ignore? It's exhausting when people see your limits as mere obstacles rather than something to be respected. Imagine your personal space as a cherished garden, a peaceful and private place that you've carefully tended. But if someone walks in without thinking, trampling on every flower bed as if it's their playground without even asking permission, you'd feel very uncomfortable, right? Psychologist Carl Rogers once said, "The only worthwhile journey is the journey back to oneself." But how can we be ourselves when others constantly intrude, leaving no space for us to exist in our own way? People who disregard boundaries often see the personal space of others as challenges to overcome, rather than protected areas worthy of respect. They intrude on your privacy, dismiss your requests for space, and ignore behaviors you've clearly defined as off-limits. A friend of mine used to work with a colleague like that. Despite her requesting to work in silence, this person constantly came to her desk, asking personal questions, disrupting her focus, and leaving her exhausted. When she set clearer boundaries, even putting up a small sign as a reminder, he still ignored it, as if her needs weren't real. In the end, she had to seek help from her manager to reclaim her workspace. How to deal with people who violate boundaries. Be direct and clear. Don't leave room for misunderstandings or loopholes. Be consistent with your boundaries. Giving in even once can be like opening the door to energy drainers. Remember to take care of yourself. You may not control their actions, but you can always control your reactions. Psychologist Henry Cloud once said, "Boundaries define who we are and who we are not." So the next time someone tries to walk into your garden uninvited, remind yourself that your flowers are not there for others to trample on. Sign 10. Constant criticism, a PhD in fault-finding. Have you ever met someone who seems to have a PhD in the art of criticizing others? These people don't hesitate to find and point out even the smallest flaws, and the closer you are to them, the more drained you feel. Imagine being surrounded by people who only see your shortcomings. It seems like your accomplishments are always overshadowed by harsh judgments. This not only hurts your feelings, but can also seriously harm your mental and even physical health. Psychologist John Gottman has discovered that in healthy relationships, there needs to be at least 5 positive interactions to make up for 1 negative one. When constant criticism exceeds this balance, it deeply affects your emotional well-being. But be careful not to confuse toxic criticism with constructive feedback. The difference lies in intention and frequency. Constructive criticism aims to help and improve, while toxic criticism only seeks to control or harm. The Stoic philosopher Seneca advises us to choose friends who have lifestyles and mindsets that bring us peace and progress. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology even showed that prolonged exposure to negativity can negatively impact our physical health. How to deal with tireless critics. Don't hesitate to express your views clearly. I appreciate your opinion, but it's not necessary here. Sometimes, this can change the atmosphere immediately. Practice empathy. The harshest critics are often the ones who suffer the most inside. Try to understand the source of their negativity. Proactively seek out people who inspire and bring positive energy to you. Choosing friends wisely is a meaningful investment in your happiness and peace. Sign 11. Lack of responsibility. A master of getting away with it. Have you ever met someone who always has a perfect reason for every mistake? Imagine you're on a journey of life, and every time an obstacle appears, instead of facing it, your companion blames everything around: the dice, the weather, even a random passerby. This is how people who avoid responsibility act. They are like masters of getting away with it, dodging every challenge in a cloud of reasons and excuses. But why is this attitude so dangerous? Imagine building a house together, and instead of acknowledging small errors like a bent nail or an uneven wall, they find every reason to brush it aside. The result is a shaky, unstable structure and a relationship filled with disappointment. This lack of responsibility is like a virus, silently spreading through relationships, sowing doubt, resentment, and frustration. I used to have a friend who always blamed everything but herself. Whenever there was a problem, she had a story to justify it, from troubles at work to conflicts with friends. Gradually, those around her began to lose trust, and I realized that without responsibility, relationships become exhausting and incomplete. Signs of someone who avoids responsibility. Always has a reason. They always have a reason ready to justify their mistakes or failures. Blames others. Instead of admitting their mistakes, they always find ways to blame others or circumstances. Always plays the victim. They often make themselves the victim to receive sympathy and hide their responsibility. Changes the subject when questioned. They often try to change the conversation when their responsibility is mentioned. But there is still hope. If you recognize some of these behaviors in yourself, that's a positive sign. Awareness is the first step to change. Remember, responsibility is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. The next time you feel the urge to blame something outside of yourself, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what else can you do to improve the situation? Responsibility not only strengthens you, but also helps you build relationships based on genuine trust and respect. Sign 12. Seeking revenge and punishment. The treasures of resentment. Have you ever met someone who simply can't let go of even the smallest mistake? They hold on to grudges as if they are invaluable treasures that cannot be abandoned. This is the final sign in our journey to recognize toxic behaviors around you, an obsessive urge for revenge or punishment. Instead of accepting feedback or respecting the choices of others, they plot retaliation, seeing it as a mission that must be completed. But their revenge isn't always as obvious as in the movies. It's often disguised with subtle tactics, spreading rumors, sabotaging opportunities, or manipulating relationships. It's as if they possess a radar finely tuned to detect every mistake, combined with a weapons arsenal ready to fire. Ironically, this constant urge for revenge often ends up poisoning them. Imagine a true story. I once had a colleague who could never let go of even the smallest conflict with anyone. After receiving some feedback in a meeting, he quietly began to spread baseless rumors about the person who gave him the feedback. As a result, the work environment became tense and no one wanted to approach him anymore. In the end, he was trapped in a vicious cycle of resentment he had created, enduring noticeable stress and a significant decline in mental health. Studies show that people who hold on to resentment and seek revenge often experience high levels of stress and poor mental health. It's like drinking poison hoping to harm someone else. It's important to remain calm when dealing with them and not feed their desire for conflict. Remember that their behavior reflects who they are, not who you are. So we've gone through 12 warning signs of toxic people together. This journey may have made you feel a bit heavy, but remember that knowledge is power. Recognizing these signs will help you make wiser choices in your relationships. I understand that dealing with toxic people is not easy, and sometimes we may feel lonely and stuck. But remember that you are not alone. There are many people who have experienced and are experiencing similar things. The important thing is that we learn to protect ourselves, set clear boundaries, and seek out healthier relationships. Important lessons. Self-awareness. Take the time to look back at yourself and see if you're falling into one of these toxic behaviors. Awareness is the first step to change and growth. Trust your intuition. Intuition is a powerful tool. If something feels wrong, trust your gut. Set boundaries. Learn to say no and protect your personal space. You have the right to decide who is allowed to enter your life. Seek support. Don't hesitate to share your feelings with people you trust. The support of friends and family can help you get through difficult times. Focus on the positive. Spend time on activities you love, people you value, and things that bring you joy and meaning. And finally, remember that you deserve to be loved and respected. You are not obligated to be in a toxic relationship. Choose relationships that bring you peace and happiness. If you have watched this far, write self-love in the comments so that I know you are one of the warriors who watched to the end of this video. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss other valuable content. Please share this video with those you think might need it. Your support could be the positive motivation they need. And right now, I encourage you to continue your journey of exploration into Stoic philosophy and human psychology by clicking on one of the 2 videos on the screen. See you in the next videos. And here's a big virtual hug for you.